In this video, we're going to create a custodial account and kick off the KYC process. The first step is making a post request to the /v2 accounts endpoint. Some data here that I'd like to point out. We have a name. This is going to be the visible name on the account when you view it in the GUI. The authorized signature must always be the name of a human that is responsible for this account. This field is going to be used to create an electronic signature on the custodial agreement between your human user and Prime Trust. This owner field is going to create a contact on this account. In the Prime Trust API, every account must have a contact, and every contact must have an account. You cannot create one without the other. So in this case, we're passing through the information in this one call. This is going to be the general, PII information of your customer. It's going to have their name, an email address, date of birth, tax ID. We request that you include geolocation and IP address. These two fields are not required, but they improve fraud detection using our automated tools. We're also going to ask for a phone number and what country that phone number is from, because Prime Trust can open accounts for users in many countries around the world. We'll need their primary address. One key point to note is that the name and address should match what's on the ID document that they will upload later. That will make the process go smoother. And the last piece of data that you want to include in the call to /v2 accounts is a webhook configuration. There's a contact email in case this configuration gets disabled due to failed attempts to reach the server. There's a URL where your webhook listening server is located. You want to enable this configuration. And if you include a shared webhook secret, you will be able to use that shared secret to decode a header value in the webhooks to ensure that you're receiving webhooks only from Prime Trust. If you do not include a shared secret, a random one will be generated for you. When you send this request, you're going to get a response showing the name of the account number, when it was created. Contributions and distributions will be frozen. What that means is that you cannot deposit any assets or funds into this account because the status is pending. Once the status is open, these will change to false and you'll be able to use the account. There's also required actions. There's no required actions. This is a KYC process, which is documented in our developer portal. There's none on this submission. So the freeze not required actions is fully populated with all the possible options. That just means that there's no required actions at this moment. Now, once you have the account set in pending state, before we can kick off the KYC process, we're going to need to upload an ID. So this is going to be a post request to /v2 uploaded documents. This body is the only API endpoint that does not take a JSON body. This is form data. So in this case, we're including a contact ID, which is the owner ID that was created when we created the account. If we go back to the account creation, you can see that down here in the relationships, I have requested that the contacts on this account are included. So we have the contact ID here. We also can request the owners because they could be different. In this case, the owner and the contact are the same. So here's the ID number that we need for uploading the documents. And I have a script in this Postman collection that actually saved this in our environment, so I don't need to copy and paste it. The other piece of data that you want to include is a human readable description and label. It's good to include both of these because they show up in different places. Public equals true will enable this document to be downloaded at a later time. And then the file, of course. In Postman, you can actually just select a file from your Postman file location that is set up previously. I have one file here that I'm going to use. When I hit send, this comes back with my description, some details. There's a link to the S3 location where you can see this image. But the most important part is the ID, which again, there's a script in this collection that saved that ID for me as the front ID document, ID. We're going to also upload the back of the driver's license, which will look exactly the same. It's the same exact call, just with a different description, back of driver's license, and a different label. And in reality, this will be a different image when you're producing in production. So at this state, we have a pending account, and we have documents uploaded to the contact on that account. The final step in the KYC process, or should I say the beginning step in the KYC process, is to call the KYC document checks endpoint. We're going to specify what contact ID we are checking. We're going to specify the uploaded document ID, which is the front of the ID, the backside document ID, which is the back of that ID. This is only needed in the case of US driver's licenses. And in the case of a passport, you would only use the uploaded document ID field. KYC document type, in this case, we're specifying a driver's license. This could also be a passport or other government ID. These fields here, we're specifying that this ID that we sent is an identity document, so we set this to true. It has a photo in it, so we set identity-photo to true. And this also contains an address, so we set proof of address to true. We're also specifying in this call the KYC document country, which in this case, we're just choosing US. So when I send this request, this is actually going to kick off the entire automated process in production. In the sandbox, as you'll see shortly, there's a few extra steps that we'll need to handle. All right. So this is our KYC document check. You can see down here that the status is pending. Now, if we were to go to our sandbox, which was previously empty when we first logged in with our user, if I refresh this screen, I will now see the account in a pending state. If I click on John Connor, who is the contact that we created on this account, we can see there's no AML check, there's no SIP check, and the identity and address checks are pending. If I scroll down here, we can see the images of the documents that were uploaded. And you actually do have the ability to upload additional documents manually if your back office personnel or support staff need to do something like that in production. Now, this is pending because we're in the sandbox. If we were in production, it would have already run and either approved or denied this customer, or possibly triggered the next steps. Next steps are a series of messages that you get via webhook that tell you how to correct an erroneous submission. So in the sandbox, we're going to go back to Postman now. And there is this sandbox only call that allows you to simulate the KYC document check being approved. All right, so now we see this KYC document check status is verified. We go back to the UI and we refresh the screen, we can now see that the identity document is verified, and we have green for both the identity and the document. We're still seeing no AML check and no SIP check, or the SIP check is pending. If we refresh one more time, we still see this. Occasionally, you'll see this get triggered in the sandbox. It's not happening now, so we're going to go back to Postman. We're going to get the pending SIP checks. So this is, again, this is only something that we are doing in the sandbox just to simulate what would happen in production. All right, so you see here the status of this SIP check is still pending after a few seconds. So we're going to have to use the sandbox only method here, calling a post request to /v2 SIP checks with the SIP check ID and a special sandbox only method to approve that SIP check. All right, now you can see the SIP check is approved. We go back to the UI and refresh the screen once more. We see both the SIP check is approved and the AML check is approved. So the AML check was automatically triggered once the SIP check was approved in the sandbox. In production, the only thing you're doing is the KYC document check, and then both the SIP and the AML processes are completely automatic in the background. So if we go back to our accounts page and refresh the screen, we see that our account is still in a pending state. After another refresh, we see now that the account is open. There's a slight asynchronous delay between the completion of the SIP check and AML check and the actual opening of the account. Now that this account is opened, it is ready to be used.